In 1983, American President Ronald Reagan announced the Strategic Defense Initiative, or SDI. This program, headed by the SDI organization within the Department of Defense, was set up broadly with the goal of exploring new technologies to combat nuclear attacks and, quote, give us the means of rendering these nuclear weapons impotent and obsolete, end quote. There were many ideas within the SDI on how this could possibly be accomplished, some more mundane and others a bit more out there. Options that were explored included lasers to shoot down ICBMs or other types of space-based interception. Most relevant for us, though, is the criticism that this program drew. Aside from the geopolitical implications, many found the ideas of a global missile shield or using lasers to shoot down missiles as being pretty fanciful. The day after Reagan's address announcing the program, Senator Ted Kennedy described it as, quote, misleading Red Scare tactics and reckless Star Wars schemes, given the speech was done in the context of attempting to significantly increase military spending. We'll get back to the whole Star Wars label thing since that's what this video is ultimately about, but the idea of these programs being unrealistic would later be supported by the American Physical Society in 1987, when they published a report on the laser-based ideas for the program called Direct Energy Weapons, saying, quote, most crucial elements required for a DEW system need improvements of several orders of magnitude. Because the elements are interrelated, the improvements must be achieved in a mutually consistent manner. We estimate that even in the best of circumstances, a decade or more of intensive research would be required to provide the technical knowledge needed for an informed decision about the potential effectiveness and survivability of directed energy weapon systems. In addition, the important issues of overall system integration and effectiveness depend critically upon information that, to our knowledge, does not exist. So basically, not only did these physicists believe that the weaponry involved in these systems would take a long time to develop, it would actually take several years to research whether the technology, once developed, would work at all before even starting that actual development. Following this report, the SDI's budget would be dropped and refocused on more traditional kinetic energy weapons, aka other missiles to shoot at the existing missiles, only now with the intention of shooting from space rather than other air-based missiles or from the ground. But again, the focus of this video is less on the specific policy elements and impacts, and more on the discussions around it, since that's where the real connection with Star Wars comes in, where people were calling it that because of the unrealistic nature of the project. 1983's announcement to the 1987 report still leaves us a nice long 4-year period for this discussion, so there was plenty of time for the discourse around SDI to evolve, even without helpful internet platforms. The derisive Star Wars label stuck after Kennedy's comments, to the point that it's probably fair to say that most people know Reagan tried to do a Star War, and way fewer would probably recognize the name Strategic Defense Initiative, if only because it's way more boring, though that's all a personal opinion. This public discourse is how we get to the story that often gets reported as George Lucas sued Ronald Reagan, which isn't quite what happened. In 1985, George Lucas and Lucasfilm did sue a group called the Coalition for the Strategic Defense Initiative and its head, former Army Lieutenant General Daniel O'Graham. This CSDI, for short, had released propaganda for the SDI, which included a commercial where a young girl says she, quote, asked my daddy what this Star Wars stuff is all about. This use of the term Star Wars in the commercial was argued by Lucasfilm to be a violation of their trademark, and they were particularly concerned with not associating Star Wars the franchise with actual real-world military action, fearing that kids in particular would keep making that association and either sour them on the franchise or associate the franchise with being supportive of real-world military action. George Lucas himself was certainly no fan of this kind of build-up either. The primary legal case here, Lucasfilm versus High Frontier et al., does not technically name Ronald Reagan or the administration per se as a defendant, but practically you could say it does include Reagan because of the connections between people, though I still think presenting it as George Lucas sued Ronald Reagan is not really accurate. The primary named defendant, High Frontier, was based on Graham's idea for a global missile shield made out of various types of interception, which Reagan had requested Graham present in 1979. Following this, Graham established High Frontier as a think tank, backed by the Conservative Heritage Foundation. While Reagan was not technically a direct part of this, he was definitely supportive of it, had connections to Graham, and spoke at High Frontier's 10th anniversary in the 90s, crediting Graham with a lot of the work to sway public opinion, which included things like this ad, along with remarks in a letter saying, quote, you and all those who have made the High Frontier project a reality have rendered our country an invaluable service for which all future generations will be grateful. I value greatly your continuing efforts to help us build a national consensus and to find the difficult answers for the profound strategic problems that face us all in this nuclear age. So again, Reagan was not a part of this directly, though he did approve of what they were doing, and some of the presentations made before the SDI was announced were done on Reagan's request, and they certainly informed a lot of the policies that would go on to make up the SDI. Still, it is not accurate to present this as Lucas sues Ronald Reagan. He did sue many of the people advocating for Reagan on this, but he also sued many opponents of SDI. Really, Graham and Reagan weren't thrilled about the mocking name for their program in the first place, and their use of the term was as much meant to try to quash the title in favor of calling it something equally ridiculous in my opinion, the Peace Shield. But their use of the name in their own materials opened the door for Lucas to sue, in Lucasfilm's opinion. The Union of Concerned Scientists, for example, was on the opposite side of the issue, and according to the Washington Post in 1985 when news came out about Lucas suing those involved, quote, Nancy Stockford, Public Information Coordinator for the Union of Concerned Scientists, said her group regularly refers to Reagan's plan as Star Wars and may do so in future commercials depending on how the court rules. So as far as I can tell, the Union of Concerned Scientists in particular weren't involved in this lawsuit, but plenty of other anti-SDI groups who used the label were. For example, the Committee for a Strong and Peaceful America. Judge Gesell, who ruled on the case, noted that the connective thread through all the defendants in the lawsuit wasn't their position on SDI, it was that they referred to it as Star Wars. Luckily for all of them, and probably frustratingly for Lucas, the court did not rule in Lucasfilm's favor, with Judge Gesell saying, quote, the defendants have not affixed any trademark to any goods or services for sale. Indeed, they are not engaged in selling anything but ideas. They do not compete with the plaintiff and are not engaged in creating any confusion or mistake that takes advantage of the plaintiff's goodwill to further a trade or business. Defendants' television messages and literature merely attempt to persuade the public of their respective but conflicting viewpoints. So, no victory for Lucas here, but the SDI was ultimately ramped down and then entirely shut down and replaced by the Ballistic Missile Defense Organization under Bill Clinton after the end of the Cold War. That's going to do it for today though. I hope you've enjoyed this more out-of-universe look at a Star Wars adjacent topic. If there's something else in or out of universe you'd like to see covered on the channel, let me know in the comments, and remember to leave a like or subscribe for more as well. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.